Major Damon Kestrel snapped the small blue notebook shut and tossed it into the dust at Lena Harrow's boots. The briefing circle went silent, except for brass rolling across the concrete from the adjacent zeroing lane and the sandstorm screaming beyond the blast wall. Oren, the compact, black and tan K-9 beside her, stiffened but did not break heel. Oren had also been trained on an emergency return command. A two-finger signal from Lena meant he was to follow the marked drainage route back to the perimeter checkpoint without her. "Pick up your laundry notes, Sergeant." Lena did not move. The acrid smell of burned propellant from the nearby zeroing lane mixed with diesel exhaust and airborne grit, leaving a bitter taste in every throat. 12 special operators watched her through dust-streaked eye protection, several wearing the thin smiles of men expecting a harmless target to shrink. She gave them nothing. At 5'1", Lena looked small beside the rifleman. Her public orders attached her to the field laundry section, while the kennel roster still named her as Oren's assigned handler. Nothing on her OCP blouse revealed the classified work behind either role. A canvas cart behind her held decontaminated uniforms, repaired sling webbing, and red tag bags of damaged clothing awaiting disposal, the least glamorous equipment at the combat outpost. Kestrel planted one boot beside the fallen notebook and faced his team as if presenting evidence. "Our laundry sergeant thinks her dog can read wind better than trained snipers," Kestrel said, letting his gaze settle on the only woman in the briefing circle. Support personnel should not confuse access with authority. A few operators laughed. Oren's nose lifted toward Ashen Rift Valley, then angled west as the air slipping through the barriers changed from warm to cold. Lena smelled ozone beneath the burned propellant residue, faint and sharp, the signature of charged dust building beyond the ridge. "Let them laugh." Kestrel picked up the notebook and flipped through pages crowded with pressure readings, hand-drawn terrain channels, ammunition temperatures, and exact timestamps. He read aloud a line about cross-valley airflow reversing beneath basalt shelves, then another about a repeating electronic pulse near the eastern cut. The storm rattled antenna cables and drove sand against the aluminum shelter like needles. "Forecast or fantasy, Harrow?" Lena met his eyes without blinking. "A record, sir." Kestrel raised the notebook so the entire detachment could see its blue cover, then waved it toward Oren. Oren's ears rotated toward a high-frequency mechanical whine buried beneath the wind, a sound too faint for the soldiers around him to isolate. Behind the barricade, a loose casing fell from a bench and rang once against concrete. "And what does your record say today?" Lena watched Oren's breathing change. 3 short scent pulls, then a fixed stare toward the relay box, the trained response he gave when he caught heated insulation, battery residue, or ozone. The command tent's compass repeater twitched left, returned to center, then twitched again at the same interval. The smell of hot circuitry drifted from a relay box that maintenance personnel had inspected less than an hour earlier. "It says the valley is already lying to your equipment." The laughter died for half a second. Kestrel stepped closer and told the team that logistics personnel often mistook maintenance noise for battlefield insight. He dropped the notebook again and pressed its edge into the dust with his heel. The edge of Kestrel's boot remained printed across the blue cover. Oren gave a low warning rumble, not at Kestrel, but toward the eastern cut marked safe on the mission map. Lena crouched, retrieved the notebook, brushed away the grit, and saw the compass repeater twitch a third time. Beyond the wall, the storm deepened into a roar. Somewhere beyond the eastern cut, an unseen transmitter cycled. Oren caught the high-frequency whine through the wind, while the nearby relay box released the trace odor of heated insulation. Oren's warning deepened as the eastern cut disappeared behind a sheet of blowing sand, and Lena watched the relay box pulse in the same 3-beat interval as the compass repeater. She opened the blue notebook, checked the pressure trend against the previous 6 hours, and marked a 4.7 hectopascal drop in station pressure over 18 minutes, a rate inconsistent with the stable conditions displayed on the tactical feed. The tactical display still showed stable conditions and a clean approach route. "The feed is compromised." Major Kestrel, turned from the operations table without lowering his voice. Lena placed two gloved fingers on the map where the eastern passage narrowed between black basalt walls, then traced a second route 600 meters north. As Lena traced the eastern corridor on the map, Oren moved to the blast barrier facing that same approach, sampled the air, and pulled away. When she pointed north, he turned toward the drainage ravine and resumed scenting. Trust the dog before the screen. Lena pulled a handheld weather meter from her utility pouch and held it above the blast barrier. The instrument registered a surface wind of 11.8 knots from the northwest, while the command system reported 6 knots from the east. Humidity had fallen to 13%, yet the relay housing carried fresh tool marks and a bypass coupler not listed on the maintenance diagram. The coupler was replaying stored navigation packets with a 2.6-second delay. Your coordinates are being displaced. Kestrel stepped close enough for Lena to smell coffee and weapons oil on his breath. He asked whether she had forgotten that she was assigned to textile recovery, not tactical intelligence. Behind him, operators tightened straps, checked magazines, and loaded precision rifles while brass cases from the morning zeroing drill clicked beneath their boots. Lena recognized 6 of the operators from a disposal inspection roster she had processed 3 weeks earlier. Every one of them had questioned the same missing weapons lot. 38 meters high and 21 east, Lena said. She had cross-checked 2 surveyed terrain points against the delayed feed. The elevation model was 38 meters high, and the grid overlay had been shifted 21 meters east. She had seen the same pattern in the compass twitch, the relay pulse, and Oren's held breath. Kestrel looked at the map, then at the men watching him. Enough. Lena kept her voice flat. Her model bracketed the upper crosswind between 13.8 and 14.6 knots, with an opposing ground flow between 8.1 and 9.0 knots. At 3,427 meters, either layer was enough to invalidate the issued firing solution. With 12% humidity and an estimated projectile flight time of 7.18 seconds, the 2 layers would produce opposite drift, making the official firing solution wrong before the trigger was pressed. Her resting heart rate remained at 52 beats per minute. The eastern cut is a prepared engagement zone. A young lieutenant named Cole Mercer glanced at Oren and then at the blinking relay box. His hand paused over the mission tablet, but Kestrel caught the hesitation and ordered him to finalize the route. The sandstorm struck the outer wall hard enough to make antenna cables slap against aluminum. Sergeant Harrow, surrender your radio. Lena unclipped the encrypted handset and placed it on the table. Kestrel revoked her tactical access, removed her from the movement roster, and ordered her to remain at the supply point with Oren and the reserve equipment. She did not protest. Anger wastes oxygen. As the team formed for departure, Lena wrote the falsified elevation, the repeating signal delay, and Kestrel's exact order in the blue notebook. She added the time, 1,427 hours, then underlined one sentence. The error was too consistent to be accidental. Oren watched the column enter the eastern cut, ears fixed forward. 18 seconds after Kestrel entered the eastern cut, the independent logistics channel dropped without warning. Lena wrote down the time, knowing the audit log would later identify the credential that had issued the shutdown command. Lena heard the relay click. Then the valley swallowed the team's signal. The first contact report reached Lena through the pre-briefed emergency guard frequency, distorted but still intelligible beneath the jamming, followed by 3 clipped call signs and the metallic rattle of someone dropping a magazine on stone. Oren snapped toward the eastern cut, hackles rising as the sandstorm hammered the blast wall and carried back the sharp smell of burned propellant. On the dark tactical screen, the team's blue icons froze in a perfect line, too orderly to be real. They're inside the box. Lena pulled a reserve multi-band field transceiver from the communications crate, connected a spare directional antenna, raised it above the trailer roofline, and rotated it until the broken transmissions separated from the jammer's carrier tone. Static flooded the speaker, then resolved into fragments. Contact left, false thermal, ridge movement, no visual. Beyond the wire, the storm screamed through Ashen Rift Valley like sheet metal dragged across concrete. find a human rhythm. From the broken calls, frozen location icons, and her terrain notes, Lena reconstructed the team's position inside a basalt corridor barely 42 meters wide, with elevated firing shells on both sides and no usable cover along the center line. 11 hostile positions remained invisible beneath thermal blankets and sand-coated rock screens, while decoy emitters painted false bodies 200 meters farther east. The first sniper fired at 2,684 meters. Through the guard frequency, his spotter called the impact 1.9 meters right. Correct left, 7/10 mil, someone called. The second shot missed farther. The instrument package reported a 7.1 knot wind from the east, but Lena's notebook predicted a 13.7 knot upper current from the northwest and a reversed 8.4 knot flow along the canyon floor. The 13.7 knot upper flow was lofting dry sand through the sight line, scattering the laser return and making the rangefinder alternate between the target shelf and the dust wall in front of it. At 3,061 meters, the calculated projectile flight time was 6.43 seconds, long enough for both wind layers to act in opposite directions. Their firing solution was not merely wrong. It was designed to fail. Kestrel ordered the snipers to engage the thermal signatures anyway. Hot brass rang against basalt while the smell of burned propellant and weapons oil thickened the narrow air. Even through flash suppressors and blowing sand, each firing sequence gave the ambush team another brief reference point on the American line. Shift to Target 7, Kestrel barked. There was no Target 7. A burst of automatic fire cut across the team's rear, sealing the route they had used to enter. Lieutenant Cole Mercer reported a wounded operator and requested permission to move north toward the unmarked ravine Lena had identified. Kestrel denied it and ordered the squad deeper into the corridor. Pride was now issuing coordinates. Lena narrowed the multi-band transceiver's receive bandwidth and isolated the jammer's carrier pattern. The signal was strongest beneath the rock shelf, not above it, which meant the jammer sat inside a buried service conduit. Orrin caught the odor of heated cable insulation venting through the drainage channel, pawed once at the opening, and fixed his attention on the buried conduit. You found the source. Lena packed a trauma pouch, 2 smoke canisters, the blue notebook, and a long-range rifle sealed in a reserve transport case. Her pulse held at 54 beats per minute as she checked the bolt, optic, and ammunition lot. The last clear transmission came from the senior sniper. Range 3,427 meters. Wind unreadable. 3 consecutive misses. No remaining correction. Then Kestrel's voice broke through, ordering a retreat into a corridor already under crossfire. Lena slung the rifle, gave Orrin a silent hand signal, and stepped into the storm. Behind them, the multi-band transceiver carried one final sentence before static consumed it. We cannot see them. Lena entered the drainage channel with Orrin 6 paces ahead, both of them nearly erased by the brown wall of sand moving through Ashen Rift Valley. The storm drove grit against her eye protection, filled the air with the bitter smell of burned propellant, and carried the distant clink of spent brass sliding down basalt. She climbed until the trapped squad appeared below as brief shadows between muzzle flashes. Hold! Orrin froze beside a fractured rock shelf, nose angled into the wind, one ear turned toward the buried jammer and the other toward the northern ridge. Lena lowered the rifle onto her pack, opened the blue notebook, and compared the dog's breathing pattern with the pressure changes she had recorded before departure. The reserve weapon was a prototype .416 caliber extreme range rifle firing a lot-matched 500-grain solid projectile. Its verified muzzle velocity, 2,847 feet per second, was recorded beside the ammunition lot number in her blue notebook. The last cache command feed still showed a steady easterly current, but loose sand moved west along the ground while the high dust streamed northwest. 2 winds. Using surveyed grid coordinates rather than the unreliable laser return, she calculated the primary firing shelf at exactly 3,427 meters with a vertical difference of 186 meters. Her solver bracketed the upper wind at 14.2, to 14.6 knots from the northwest, and the ground reversal at 8.6 to 8.9 knots from the southeast. She entered station pressure, air temperature, 10.8% relative humidity, and the 186-meter elevation difference before accepting a 7.21-second flight estimate. "Not one correction," she whispered. "Two." Below, the senior sniper fired again, using the corrupted solution, and the round vanished into the storm nearly 2 meters beyond the hidden position. Kestrel shouted for another engagement, forcing the squad to expose its last stable firing point. A remotely operated weapons sensor head pulsed beneath the basalt overhang, confirming the location Lena had marked in her notebook 40 minutes earlier. Pride had become a targeting beacon. Lena adjusted for air density, spin drift, and the Coriolis effect created by latitude and firing azimuth. She waded through one pulse of the ground wind, then another. Oren marked the ground-level reversal, while streamers of sand visible through the optic showed the upper current beginning to weaken. Her heart rate descended from 54 beats per minute to 48. Now, she inhaled, exhaled halfway, and allowed the reticle to settle during the quiet interval between heartbeats. The rifle cracked once, its report flattened by the storm, and the casing struck stone with a clean metallic note. 7.21 seconds later, the round broke the exposed sensor housing. The remote weapon slewed off the corridor and stopped firing. No one below understood what had happened. Lena shifted 2 feet left, logged the pressure change, and found a second position at 3,116 meters. Oren turned toward the shelf at the first ultrasonic whine of the emitter's cooling fan, nearly 3 seconds before the receiver completed its signal classification. She fired during the next wind reversal and disabled the operator controlling the false thermal signatures. "Move north," Lena transmitted over the emergency guard channel. Lieutenant Mercer recognized her voice and pulled the wounded operator toward the 6-meter corridor she had identified. Kestrel demanded to know who had authorized the order, but Lena's next round disabled the optic controlling a second remote firing position and removed its view of the withdrawal corridor. Lena changed firing locations after every round, never remaining long enough for counterfire to fix her position. 4 additional long-range positions came in cold sequence: 2,948 meters, 2,771 meters, 2,633 meters, and 2,509 meters. Lena recalculated the wind and flight time for each shot, while Mercer's team suppressed the closer positions once the long-range crossfire collapsed. Oren alerted on. Heated wiring, weapons lubricant, and human scent leaking from behind the thermal screens. Lena combined those alerts with muzzle flashes and radio reports to separate real positions from electronic decoys. Each correction went into the blue notebook before the next round left the chamber. Her opening shots broke the kill box and stripped the ambush of long-range control, while Mercer's operators suppressed the closer positions and moved the wounded through the northern corridor. When the final route opened, Mercer's squad moved through the northern ravine under cover of smoke, carrying their wounded and leaving no one behind. Kestrel emerged last, staring toward the high shelf where the small logistics sergeant lay behind the rifle he had never imagined she could use. One operator asked how she had made the first shot. Lena closed the blue notebook and rose beside Oren. "There was no miracle," she said. "Only mathematics, physics, and someone willing to observe." The last hostile sector went quiet, but Oren did not relax. He moved past the abandoned firing shelf, nose low, and stopped beside a sand-caked transmitter half buried under a basalt lip. Lena knelt, smelled fresh preservative oil beneath the burned propellant, and found part of a maintenance control prefix beneath the sand-caked mounting bracket. "This came from our side." The device radiated more heat than the surrounding stone, and the trace odor of armory preservative remained trapped beneath its protective foam. Lena recorded the time, 1,538 hours, and photographed the device before changing its position. She did not open the housing. Through a fractured access panel, she documented a programmable RF control board from the same restricted electronics lot certified as destroyed 6 months earlier. The external serial plate had been removed, but a micro-etched component code. The connector pattern and the amber inspection lacquer match photographs and disposal records documented in her blue notebook. Oren sampled the foam lining, then gave the same trained scent response beside Kestrel's command pack. Lena recognized standard preservative used by the base armory, not a scent unique to Kestrel himself. Lieutenant Mercer watched in silence as she turned 3 pages back to an inventory inspection dated 22 days earlier. She had noted missing sealant, altered disposal weights, and a shipment code approved under Kestrel's authority. The pattern was no longer suspicion. It was sequence. Her first round at 3,427 meters had exposed how precisely the ambush had been built around the corrupted firing data. The ambush team had received the altered route package, false terrain overlay, and issued firing cards, allowing them to position real weapons outside the locations where Kestrel's snipers had been told to aim. Someone had given them more than coordinates. They had a route package and firing cards. Kestrel arrived with 2 operators and ordered everyone away from the device. He called it enemy equipment and ordered 2 operators to bag it under his command evidence log before Lena could complete the exterior documentation. Oren stepped between them without growling, body rigid, eyes fixed on Kestrel's hand. "Heal him, Sergeant." Lena did not move. She pointed to the partially visible maintenance control prefix beneath the relay mount, a prefix assigned only to Kestrel's property accountability chain. Mercer recognized the prefix and looked at Kestrel. The commander's expression changed for less than a second. That was enough. Lena reviewed the mission sequence in her head. Falsified elevation data, a repeating 2.6-second signal delay, the disabled monitoring channel, an eastern route with no extraction lane, and 11 firing positions aligned with the false target overlay. Every operator Kestrel had placed in the lead element had either inspected the missing weapons lot or signed a discrepancy report connected to it. "You were not leading us through the valley," she said. "You were delivering witnesses." Kestrel ordered Lena disarmed for insubordination and unauthorized weapons use. He ordered the transmitter redirected away from the EOD collection point under his command evidence log, claiming intelligence personnel would process it separately. No one challenged him openly. Fear still wore rank. Lena surrendered the rifle and kept her pulse at 51 beats per minute. Before Kestrel could take the notebook, she tore out a narrow strip containing the maintenance prefix, the altered coordinates, and the exact time the logistics channel had been shut down. She folded it once, slipped it beneath Oren's collar tab, and gave him a silent 2-finger signal toward the northern drainage route. "Go home." Oren vanished into the blowing sand while Kestrel turned to organize the withdrawal. Lena closed the blue notebook and allowed herself to be placed under guard. The commander believed the transmitter was the evidence. He had not yet understood that Oren was carrying the lead. Investigators would use to reconstruct the evidentiary chain from independent records. 6 days later, at 0615, Lena sat beside her assigned military defense counsel inside a SCIF temporarily configured for a closed Article 32 preliminary hearing. Every participant had been cleared for the classified annex. An impartial Army judge advocate served as the preliminary hearing officer, while government counsel occupied the opposite table. Fluorescent lights hummed above gray acoustic walls, and the ventilation carried the stale smell of coffee and gun-cleaning solvent through the secured hearing room. Major Damon Kestrel stood beneath the command flag in a pressed uniform, untouched by dust. Staff Sergeant Harrow abandoned her assigned post. The preferred specifications alleged failure to obey a lawful order, unauthorized use of government property, dereliction of duty, and reckless endangerment. He described Lena as a logistics specialist who had mistaken technical curiosity for tactical authority. The blue notebook rested inside a clear evidence sleeve, displayed like proof of obsession. Silence his weight. Lieutenant Cole Mercer sat behind Kestrel with his wounded arm secured across his chest. The senior sniper beside him kept his eyes lowered, while 2 surviving operators had submitted nearly identical sworn statements drafted by Kestrel's operations staff before either man consulted independent counsel. Each document claimed that Kestrel's orders had preserved the unit and that Lena's intervention had created confusion during withdrawal. Lena's defense counsel marked the identical language in both statements for cross-examination. Neither operator looked toward her. The preliminary hearing officer asked Kestrel to explain the long-range firing sectors Lena had neutralized and the northern corridor that allowed the team to escape. Kestrel called them favorable battlefield developments and argued that no reliable record connected Lena's shots to the positions. He claimed the storm made exact reconstruction impossible. The storm recorded everything, Lena said. Her defense counsel requested permission to enter the firing data and notebook entries into the preliminary record. The remote weapon sensor housing she struck had stood at 3,427 meters, 186 meters below her elevation, beneath a 14.6 knot upper crosswind and an opposing 8.9 knot ground current. Humidity had measured 10.8%. Calculated flight time was 7.21 seconds, and her heart rate had settled at 48 beats per minute before release. Numbers do not seek promotion. Government counsel objected that the calculations relied partly on an unofficial notebook and observations not generated by authorized instruments. The preliminary hearing officer admitted the statement provisionally, subject to authentication and corroboration. Across the room, Kestrel smiled as though the qualification had already buried her. Procedure was his second ambush. Government counsel introduced authenticated footage of Lena leaving the supply position after her communications access had been revoked. It showed her opening the reserve rifle case, loading ammunition, and entering the storm without direct authorization. The footage ended 18 seconds before the independent logistics channel failed, and the corresponding network audit had not yet been entered into the hearing record. "Do you deny disobeying Major Kestrel's order?" the preliminary hearing officer asked. Lena looked at Kestrel, then at the men he had led into the kill box. She could hear the wall clock turning behind the hearing officer and the faint metallic tap of a flag clip against its pole. Lena closed the blue notebook without looking toward the doorway. "I deny that it was lawful." Kestrel recommended continued pretrial restraint and suspension of Lena's access to weapons and classified systems, arguing that her refusal to obey him made her an operational risk. Government counsel asked the hearing officer to note Kestrel's recommendation in the preliminary report. Victory made him careless. Lena stated that the order had been designed to place known witnesses inside a prepared engagement zone. Kestrel laughed once and asked where her proof was now that the transmitter had never reached the EOD evidence collection point. Before Lena could answer, the preliminary hearing officer announced the next classified witness. The door opened. Every uniformed officer rose, and General Elias Varden entered carrying a black folder whose pages were redacted almost entirely from margin to margin. General Varden placed the black folder before the preliminary hearing officer, and the room settled into a silence deeper than the storm outside. More than 90% of the file had been covered in black classification bars, yet one line remained visible beneath Lena Harrow's photograph. Sable Meridian. "I am here under subpoena to authenticate a classified annex. I am not here to direct this hearing." Kestrel's confidence narrowed into stillness. The general identified himself as General Elias Varden, commander of the compartmented program that had once employed Lena as a long-range interdiction specialist and environmental ballistics analyst. Her laundry assignment was not a demotion, but a protected cover after the program's formal closure. The rifle used at Ashen Rift Valley was a platform on which Lena held current classified qualification records. Staff Sergeant Harrow had more documented operational time on that weapons platform than every shooter in this room combined. General Varden opened the file to a page showing only dates, mission codes, and confirmed recovery operations. The distances were redacted, but a surviving certification line documented Lena's ability to calculate multi-layer wind, atmospheric density, Coriolis drift, and projectile decay without digital support. Kestrel objected that classified history could not excuse disobedience during his operation. The general looked at him without expression. "It does not need to." An Army CID special agent then introduced a sealed evidence pouch containing the strip recovered from Oren at the perimeter checkpoint. Body camera footage showed 2 sentries photographing the collar tab before removal, signing the evidence label, and transferring the strip directly to investigators. Oren had delivered the lead. The checkpoint record had converted it into evidence. The strip contained the altered grid coordinates, the maintenance control prefix, and the exact time the independent logistics channel had been disabled. A systems technician confirmed that the channel shut down at 1,427 hours under Kestrel's credentials, 18 seconds before the camera feed failed. A procurement officer then produced records showing that the jammer's programmable RF control board came from a restricted electronics lot falsely certified as destroyed. That equipment remained within your command's property accountability chain until it appeared at the ambush site, the investigator said. Lena requested her notebook. She opened it to the firing sequence and read without emphasis. First shot, remote weapon sensor housing at 3,427 meters. Elevation difference, 186 meters. Upper wind, 14.6 knots northwest. Ground reversal, 8.9 knots southeast. Relative humidity, 10.8%. Estimated flight time, 7.21 seconds. Heart rate, 48 beats per minute. The 11 ambush positions have been aligned with the false terrain overlay and the decoy target package issued to Kestrel's sniper team. That arrangement required prior access to the route package, firing cards, and altered digital map. Mathematics became testimony. Lena turned several pages back and showed the preliminary hearing officer her earlier inventory entries. Altered disposal weights, missing inspection lacquer, duplicated authorization codes, and Kestrel's signature appearing across all 3 anomalies. Each note carried a date, timestamp, and corroborating witness mark from routine logistics processing. What Kestrel had mocked as laundry notes formed a contemporaneous record corroborated by server logs, inventory photographs, witness initials, and maintenance timestamps. You sold the route, moved the weapons, and sent the inspectors into the valley, Lena said. Kestrel claimed fabrication, but government counsel called the system custodian, who authenticated archived footage showing Lena recording the warnings before deployment. After being placed under oath, Lieutenant Mercer disavowed the prepared statement and submitted a sworn correction describing Kestrel's order to block the northern withdrawal. The senior sniper followed, confirming that Kestrel had ordered repeated engagements using data the team had already identified as corrupted and had denied Mercer permission to use the northern withdrawal route. For the first time, Kestrel's rank produced no response. Government counsel requested a recess and withdrew support for the specifications against Lena. After reviewing the authenticated record, the convening authority dismissed them in writing, while Army CD agents advised that probable cause now existed to apprehend Kestrel. Kestrel was relieved of command, his classified access was suspended, and he was ordered to surrender his credentials. Army CD agents then placed him in restraints and escorted him from the room without incident. No one spoke as he was escorted past the operators he had intended to silence. Lena closed the blue notebook. Her pulse remained at 50 beats per minute. By 17:30, the preliminary hearing had adjourned, the specifications against Lena Harrow had been dismissed, and Kestrel had been formally relieved of command pending further proceedings. General Elias Varden waited beside the command table with a presentation case containing a Valor Award, a classified citation, a sanitized public summary, and orders restoring her eligibility for an operational billet. Outside, the sandstorm had weakened to a dry whisper against the windows. You earned all of this. Lena looked at the medal but did not touch it. The blue notebook rested beneath her left hand, its cover scarred by Kestrel's boot and ashen Rift Valley's grit. Oren sat beside her, watching the doorway rather than the general. Recognition was another kind of noise. Varden offered her a headquarters billet as senior instructor and assessment lead for a rebuilt long-range training cell. The assignment would give her authority over selection standards and place the operators who had laughed at her inside her classroom. No ceremony. No headquarters billet, sir. Lena closed the presentation case. My current assignment is not finished. The following morning, the same special operators who had watched Kestrel throw her notebook into the dust found Lena inside the field laundry facility. She wore protective gloves, stood beside an industrial washer, and inspected torn sling webbing under a white task light. Steam carried the clean scent of detergent through the room, while repaired uniforms moved along a steel rack with soft clicks. The senior sniper stopped at the doorway. He had missed 3 times at 3,427 meters because he trusted corrupted instruments over changing wind. Lena's first round had crossed 3,427 meters of layered wind and disabled the weapon locking down their escape route. That single shot had opened a corridor that saved his team. "Sergeant, why are you back here?" Lena threaded a fresh section of webbing through a damaged buckle and tested it against the load standard. Oren lay beneath the workbench, his ears shifting whenever the ventilation system changed pitch. On a nearby shelf, the metal case remained unopened beneath a stack of supply forms. Because this work still matters. The operators entered one by one, uncertain where to stand or what to say. No one laughed at the blue notebook now. No one referred to Oren as a supply dog. They watched Lena record a frayed harness, a failed seam, and a shipment number with the same precision she had used to map 11 hostile positions. Skill did not change when the room changed. Before Varden departed, he left a small, unmarked challenge coin on the work table. It carried no unit name, only a dark meridian line cut through brushed metal. Lena placed it inside the rear pocket of her notebook and returned to sorting uniforms. She accepted no speech, no formation, and no applause. By evening, the base knew that the quiet K-9 handler working under a laundry support cover had saved an elite team from a deliberate kill box. She still moved through the facility exactly as before, expressionless, with Oren at her heel. When Mercer asked what real courage looked like, Lena sealed the final repair bag and gave him the only answer she considered useful. It is doing the necessary work after everyone stops watching. If you respect the silent courage, discipline, and precision of these undercover heroes, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel for more stories. This story is a fictional military narrative created for entertainment, reflection, and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental.